we'll kick off today's lesson with some fun stuff. Thanks again, everybody, for joining in. 1011 on your radio dial. Appreciate your time and effort. And again, get your work done over these next few days. You don't want to be sitting here in June worried about getting a 0 for the quarter, which is going to happen. You will see people getting 0s for the quarter, and that's no bueno. Always check the classwork page and make sure that you've completed all of the lessons and all the things. I mean, it seems like a lot, but it's also 3 months of information, and it's not as much as we would be doing if we were in the classroom. So yeah, let's get into some new Logic info. Logic 10.5, I've been messing around with now for weeks. I opened up a project that I've been kind of messing around with off and on for the last few weeks. So let me just save this, close it out for just a moment, start a new project, and you're going to see that one of the first things that kind of comes to fruition here is this concept of live loops. 10.5 has been the biggest upgrade I've seen in Logic in close to a decade, maybe since Logic 9 to 10, and that was, I think, 2011. Yeah, so almost a decade now. So this is a major, major change in Logic because of all of the new elements that are involved. And we're going to try to go through all of those and demo all of those throughout the week. Today, I'm going to focus pretty much on live looping because that is, like I said, the first thing you see when you open Logic for the first time after you've downloaded all the new content, got the new 10.5. Again, to check that, just go to Logic and About Logic Pro, and it'll say 10.5. Again, a free upgrade if you have Logic. You'll see that in your new project settings, you have empty project like we always traditionally did. And we looked at this last week when we were doing our film project. But now you have live loops. And live loops is one of the bigger changes. So anyone who's doing home studio recording, which is really what this was intended for, it wasn't really intended for, you know, the real producer with already existing equipment and sound and stuff like that. That's not what this upgrade was for. This upgrade was specifically for the home recording engineer, home recording. They addressed a lot of things they were lacking. There are still some things out there that they are lacking. I anticipate another point version coming up in the next probably 3 to 5 months. Also, I believe Logic is still free for 90 days. So if you haven't gotten it yet, because you don't have a Mac, which is fine, but if you have a Mac and you haven't gotten it yet and gone through the free trial, dude, get it now. Because 10.5 is phenomenal. If you've already gotten it and you're still in your trial period, I believe you could still get the update. So why not? And also, just again, if you have a Mac, it's $200. Ask for it for a gift or save your money or whatever it is you need to do, because this thing, to me, right now, leads the pack. Pro Tools is always going to be there. I'm never going to avoid using it because of its universality. But Logic for the home studio creator, for what you guys probably want to do with it, to create music and to do some fun stuff, Logic has the content. Logic has the interface. Logic has the connectivity. Logic has the ability. Logic has the plugin work. Logic has everything you would probably need for songwriting, beat making, film scoring, podcasting, radio, anything you could think of. This program has manipulated itself into being a very universal program. The biggest problem with it is it's only Mac. And so that's the one thing that holds Logic back from being probably the most universal software out there for audio producers. And that's why Pro Tools also still stands tall. It is Mac and PC. Everyone has it. Everyone in the music industry has used it. And you need to know it. But again, for home studio people, this live loop upgrade has been unbelievable. So I want to go into that demo project again. And by the way, just so you know, very funny story. YouTube actually earmarked this as copyrighted material. Why? Because as I recorded the lesson and put it up on the archive, Billie Eilish's song, Ocean Eyes, actually is a copyrighted song. But wait, how do I own it? Like I literally have track by track, piece by piece, plugin by plugin, route by route, everything that was done here. So how could it be copyrighted if I own it? So I submitted to YouTube a full explanation of why Ocean Eyes was in my video. Now, I didn't get blocked. I didn't get in trouble. It just says copyright claim. And I wanted, because it's so new, because 10.5, Logic 10.5 is so new, I wanted YouTube to know, hey, they give it to you. It's yours. You should be able to use pieces of this. You should be able to sample this. You should be able to remix this. They're giving it to you. You actually are paying for it. When you bought the software, you technically bought temporary rights to this song. That's the way content works. They didn't say, here's a song, now you can never use it for anything else. What would be the point of that? So I actually wrote to YouTube and told them about the issue. So I haven't heard back from them directly. I haven't really looked back in the YouTube channel to see if it was put back. But the content is here now. And you can see, if we go into live loops, they did not include the live loops portion of this in the demo song. They used just strictly MIDI sampling. And of course, they did all this arrangement work, which is fantastic. It just puts my point even further about how arrangement and labeling and organization and color coding is used in the industry. It is 100% is being used in the industry. It wasn't just done for this demo lesson. It was actually done for the real thing. So let me just get out of this for a moment and go back into this. So when you go into a new project in the new 10.5, you now have two options, empty project or live loops. Now, it doesn't really matter which one you select because you'll be able to access both your traditional edit window and a live loops version, no matter which one you go to. So let's say I choose live loops. I mean, the difference down here is nothing, right? It's still in a tempo of 120, key is C, 4/4. My input and output, my sample and bitrate, right? Let's say choose. All right, so they automatically open you up with a loop library, lots of new loops, lots of new content with this. And you'll see now your edit window looks a little different now, doesn't it? Of course, if you wanted to open your own loops, which is over here, you wanted to build your own loops, you could do that. So instrument, pick an instrument, let's say a piano, because it's easy to start with a piano. Throw a Yamaha on. So, and now we are ready to go. Interesting right now that as much as I don't see anything here, I am going to be recording. Okay, so wait, I thought I recorded something. Didn't I hit record up here? Well, live loops doesn't quite work like that. We're going to go through it. Let's see if anyone's recorded over in the traditional place. Ah, well, look at that. Now, it was recorded over here in the traditional edit window, but it did not record over here in the live loops. Now, here's the big thing, and this is where it's going to get a little crazy and weird and different of how we start now looking at things in Logic. Let's put our playhead right at 5, all right, and let's cut this up into 2 separate 4-bar loops, right? Here's my loop 1. Get out of here. Here's my loop 1, right, and this is what it sounds like. Of course, if I wanted to quantize that, I could do that, which I will. Just quantize it up so it's every bar. Move this up, bring these guys back, drop these guys back where they probably should belong. All right, somehow the quantization was a little off, but that's fine. Oh, because I have it in 16th. Okay. If I had it to every bar, I'd be fine. So here's the 4-bar loop again. Click up here, right? We could check the click. So I don't know if I want both of those notes, 3 of those notes. See if that helps. Okay. So let's see how that loop works out. All right. So I don't mind that loop. Now, again, when we hit record up here in the top, we didn't actually record into the live loop section. To record into the live loop section, we actually have to go over to the first box where the live loop will be recorded and do it from there. Let's take a look at something really quick. Now you'll notice something different about Logic. There is this little bar that now exists in between the live loop section and the regular edit window. We have the ability to mute one side or mute the other in order to either go from regular MIDI sampled notes to sampled loop. The other thing we have the ability to do now is actually move things we create in the live loops into the edit window and vice versa. Move a loop that we created in the edit window over to the live loops. Now, I find that process to be rewarding because now I can spend the time here in my canvas getting everything right, getting my notes right, getting my edits right, quantization, all that stuff. And then once I've done that, I can actually drag it right into my live loop. So I'll push play. And you can see it is playing on this right side, right? It's playing over here, but it's muted. So the interesting part about this is they really don't play at the same time, even though they're the same sample instrument. It's the same playback. It's the same concept. If I want to go back to this, I could do that. I'll go back to the beginning here. And then I could convert it back over to that. And you see now this one's not playing, and now this one is. So it's kind of one or the other, but you could have a mix of both live loops and created edit window information. This is where it starts to get a little difficult. There is some limitations to this over here. If you created a 4-bar loop like I did over here, and then the next one is only 2 bars, for instance, let me show you. I'm going to put a new software instrument in, and in this case, we'll make it just a very simple orchestral string bass, okay? Right? And we're here. We're going to record over here as opposed to recording over there. We're going to record in the regular edit window, just so I have a click and all that other good stuff. So, okay. Now I know we can go in and we can quantize this, get these things all lined up nicely. I want to just check my last note there because I want it to be a little, yeah, my last note I knew shifted a little less than I wanted to. So this is a D. I want to go in here and make this the D. All right, so now they should play nicely together. Let's hear both of these in the edit window. Much better. Okay. I like the 4-bar loops I created. The first one up here, I'm going to delete that because I made changes to it. I'll go back to my edit window. I'll drag that 4-bar loop into here. I'm going to take the bass loop now and drag that guy into here. Now, the good thing is these were both 4-bar loops. The problem is if I, by chance, only made a 2-bar loop, for instance, if I cut this down to 2 bars and I bring that in, here's the problem. It only has the 2 notes. So when you play these together, it's just going to keep repeating the bass 2 notes, but keep going with 4 bars of this. So it's 4 bars of this, 2 bars of this, and it'll just keep playing. And they actually get out of sync after the first 2 bars. Now, in order to play these together, I can't just push play and then run down and push play here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to push this button down here on live loops, and it'll start playing at the same time. Here we go. Now, again, it doesn't sound terrible because the 2 notes here are in the same key as my piano. But you could see it's going through 2 cycles for every 1 cycle of this. but it looks like they're the same length. Don't get confused. This is not about the length of this box anymore. This is not like a clip over here in the edit window. It is 100% about how long the actual loop is. So now that I extended it out to 4 bars, let's put that one in there. Let's see if they play nice together now. Well, no, now I'm out of sync, right? Because they stopped at different times. Oh, stop it. Stop it. Okay, we'll play these back here. There we go. Okay. Now we're back in sync. Now we have all 4 notes for both loops, right? So easy enough to get, stop it. Get back over here and get back to the beginning. But that's the key here, is that even though you're looking at what looks like a clip that could be the same length, you have to make sure that the loops you're creating are necessarily are going to be the same length. So if they're 2-bar loops, 4-bar loops, 10-bar loops, you don't have one that's 10 and one that's 8. If you're using chordal changes, things are going to get thrown out of key very quickly when you're trying to play a G chord, but you end up playing a B sharp. You know, that's not going to work out for you. So the first thing I did, again, just to recap here, is I created a quick 4-bar loop. And we can actually get rid of this because we're not going to be using that. Over here in the regular edit window, I'm going to get rid of live loops for a moment just to stop looking at it. What's interesting is you'll notice this little bar here. This is a brand new thing to Logic 10.5. It lets you see and lets you go between live loops and regular loops. So I can actually bring them back over here to the edit window, in a sense, muting these guys for now. And now I'm back to using Logic normally, which then allows me to, you know, possibly bring in a new loop or create a new loop. In this case, we would maybe put in a beat, and then we'd put maybe a 8-bar, right, an after hours beat. We could drag that bad boy in. Let's now take a look at the live loops. Interesting. Can I put this in here? The answer is yes. So even though this was MIDI and they're green, we can still make loops for audio. Live loops works in audio. Let's minimize a bunch of these windows so you can see what I'm talking about here. Let's go back to using our live loops. 4-bar, 4-bar, and this looks like it's 2 bars. So it's going to repeat 2 bars. But that's okay because it's a beat. It's not tonal, and tonal changes are different. Let's push play on all these. Now, of course, over here in the edit window, stop it. Thank you. I hate when that happens. That's the one thing I'm starting to get used to, is that if I hit spacebar and enter to go back to the beginning, it does it, but you have to be in the window. You see the blue line around the edit window, and now the blue line around the live loops window. Now, if I push spacebar here, they'll just keep playing. The playhead will start taking off, and I can't stop it. So now I got to come back over here. Something to be aware of, that things are a little different now with live loops in the picture. This one wants to go. So you could see that a quarter of the way through on these loops is almost a halfway through on this loop, which means, you know, it's 1/2 of its length. If this is 4 bars, then this is 2 bars, 1/2 of its length. Now you notice that this just keeps looping and looping and looping and looping and looping. Over here, if I were to push play, and again, just to switch everything back over to the regular edit window, if I were to push play in this, you'll note that the beat will go away after 2 bars. Right? So you can tell that what you're seeing is what you're getting. But if you wanted to use it in terms of quote unquote live looping, which is really not good for live at all, believe it or not, then you would use it over here. And this is very useful, very cool, again, for your home studio people, for the things that are out there right now. Some of these projects are unbelievable. I want you to take a look at the the starter grids, which we just quickly went over to when we were starting with the new version. So again, new project, empty or live, we know it doesn't really make a difference because you can go into the edit window in a live loops and you can go into live loops from an empty project. Doesn't really make a difference. We did look at the demo projects from Billie Eilish, right? And we saw that she was only using edit window stuff. Her producer did not make any live loops. So what kind of advancement can we have, or what kind of ideas can we generate when there's not much content out there with people that were using live loops? So Logic went in and built some of these temporary projects, these introductory based things with genre in mind. And obviously, you know, there's icons, which is nice to know what the heck's going on. And you can really just go in and kind of pick something. I like Flex and Flow. All right, we're going to choose that template. It's a template with all pre-designated loops from the library of Logic. You want to get ideas? Go look at what other people have done. And I don't mean ideas like I want to make a song just like that. I'm talking about the idea of being able to build full live loop projects. You'll see there is no edit window here. If I go into the edit window, ain't nothing there. So this was built 100% by loops found in the loop library over here. So let's hear some of the loops they created. I'll put the mic closer. I'm going to click on a bunch of these loops. So you could see when I push play down here on section 1, that is these loops. It doesn't automatically travel then to the next one until I'm ready to play it. And this is where it starts to become that live thing, right? We can do it live. We can actually trigger these with MIDI notes. We can build them out onto a sample pad. That is 100% possible. But building it from the start is what's not easy. Let's go back in. I'm going to put the mic close and I'm going to click on all the sections so you can see how they built these. Here's one. Don't we feel special when we can push a bunch of buttons and make music, right? So we don't feel like musicians and we don't feel like engineers. We're just pushing 9 different buttons. And that's all I did. To create that kind of composition, I had to listen to all of them first to find out what my pattern was. And once I pushed, like I found out the 2 through 5 were really like kind of hype. And then there was one in here that was a little low key. 9 again was low key. The beginning was low key. So it's about building up, breaking down, creating some variation, and so forth. Now, I have this huge, massive amount of loops. Some of them were much faster than others. Obviously, some of them were, maybe 4 bars. Some of them were, I think there was 2 bars. There was 1 or 2 in here that were really, really quick. I think it was these guys here. No, it wasn't that one. Stop. I said stop. Thank you. And that's all that is just, which is kind of annoying. But there's a bunch of these ones, especially in the drums and the 808 and stuff like that. They're just super fast. You can, almost not as fast. Yeah, there's a really fast hi-hat where you can actually now see how did they create that trilling of the hi-hat, right? It's a lot of different notes. So if you can actually take things that people did and break it down in your mind, like how did they get that kind of really fast triplet or 5, how did they do that? Well, you can actually look at the programming that was done on this. And within one beat, there's, 5 or 6 different versions of it. And, if you like this pattern, then you can actually copy it and paste it into your own project. Again, these are royalty-free based things. So if you wanted that same beat at 135, or you want to change that to something bigger or better, these are elements that you can utilize. I don't see why you wouldn't. There'd be no reason not to. It just seems like you should be utilizing everything you possibly can in order for this to make sense to you, right? I'm just zooming in and out right now just to show you some of the loops here, and you can see, viewing live loops, what is what. Even though I've recolor coded these will be audio, which looks like waveforms that were bent around in a circle, and these are MIDI notes, which look like they were bent around a circle. So just think of it as it's a MIDI clip, and then they just kind of rolled it up like toilet paper on a roll. And same thing with audio. They just spun it around and it works like a clock, right? It starts on the top, works clockwise around the clock. Some are faster than others because of their number of bars. But regardless, they should then, play relatively the same looping time, right? Everything's at 135. Everyone's moving forward. Right? We could see that this one's going to finish its loop before any of the other ones do. Actually, the beats and the vocal chops are actually at the same time. So they matched. And you're like, oh, what was that? That was this guy right here. Right? How do I get that trill like they were doing on this? There it is. Copy and paste if you want that. Right? You want that? You want that in your song? Go take it. The pattern's already built for you. It's a 1-bar pattern. Take it. It's yours. Go put it into one of your projects and see if you can make that work. Or edit it, take it, copy it, bring it in, make it your own. Change the pattern of the hi-hat. Again, this is the reason why I tend to go into these types of projects. I don't use them by any means. This is not something I would go out and pretend like I did it. This is something I would use some of the techniques and some of the patterns and some of the loop ideas that they're using for my own work. If I wanted something like that, boom, I got it. Let's see what else they have here. Nope, that's not what I want to do. Back to my participants here. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave people hanging outside of the chat here. Let's go into new. Goodbye. Did not want to do that. Wanted it to be from a template. There we go. Starter grids. Let's see what else is out there. So again, we used, that was Flex and Flow. Pretty cool. chill hip hop masher, Chromium. I want to look at one that's more, EDM based. And I'm thinking something like bass house. So let's go into bass house masher. Oh boy. And again, it's going to be live loops. So we're going to see a combination of MIDI and we'll get to that at a later date. We'll talk about that new element into live loops. Is that now there's this really cool remixed effect in here that we can add. We'll get into that later. That's always fun to play with. But yeah, here's something that's like really obviously EDM based, fast paced. 128 is pretty good. Again, a combination of, I'm going to say mostly audio. Looking at this really quick, if I zoom in a little bit, let's go this way. Interesting here though, and this is something, and here's some MIDI, obviously here, audio. Look at the bass fills on this. They're not wrapped around. They're not in a circle format. What do they sound like? Let's see what they sound like. And it's going through its cycle. Interesting. Huh. All right, let's take it out of this. So loud. And I can trigger some of these. And I just triggered that one. Separate. So as you know, all these loops are playing in their timing, right? But now I have the ability, while that's going on over here, to play other sampled versions, other things from other loops. If I wanted to include a ton of these in the total mix, I could do that. Again, I can also, in live loops, push and play this down. I'm turning down a little bit, right? And I can mute things out of there. I can get rid of the hi-hats in real time. And then what you can do as a DJ or a home studio producer is you could actually program these mute buttons to pieces on your sampler. If you had some sort of sample pad, there are ways that you can go through this live and utilize it as a live sampler, as opposed to having other pre-programmed stuff in there. Let's see what else there is. And that's a little crazy too. Interesting. Very different loops made up here. But again, you could play one at a time, right? And you can actually hear what's going on in the project. Again, if you wanted some of these loops, you wanted to know where that bass drop was or that synth was that I was looking for. Where's that synth? What's this? That's pretty cool. Too much for me. Oh, I like that one, right? So synth frenzy chords. Let's see where I can find that. And I can just type it into my loop library. It's a frenzy, SYN synth, frenzy synth chord 2. And it's right here. There it is. Magical, right? So you can go and look at loops that you like and identify them here very quickly, and then be able to write them down or pull them into your own project. Let's go back really quick and go back into my other project that I had going on, and I built into a current song. Now, this is a lot more difficult than it sounds, because this particular song, I round to 130 BPM. All right, so I built some live loops into that. Take a look at this. This is a project, existing project for an artist, and there's audio, there's MIDI, and I added these new MIDI elements here. Once I created my 4-bar loop, I then took that and popped it over here. Now the issue becomes some of it is longer than others. So this is where it gets a little tricky in what I was talking about before. If you had a 4-bar loop and then followed up with a 2-bar loop, as we saw in some of these projects, the 4-bar loop would run, and then the 2-bar loop would run twice, 2 times in a cycle as the 4-bar loop ended. Obviously, it's half of the time. But when you have more of a mixed project using audio and MIDI without really introducing loops or clips, this is where it starts to get a little difficult, and you got to be really on your toes with how you're programming this. Now, I could just play these individually, and together they seem to play okay, I believe. And they're pretty much perfectly in sync over here. Let's see how it plays then in with the audio over here. Let's pop these bad boys back on. We need the drums, we need the guitars. Put that back on. All right, so let's see how easy it is to then change things on this side. And they seem to be a little fast. They're a little out of sync with the music, and they also don't start at the same time. So I'm going to slow them down. I'm going to throw them at 128 just to see where we're at. Yep, they're still a little fast, right? So let's drop them down to 125. And that's better. So now I know my loop for this is at 125. So I'm taking a really like acoustic song, slow, but I was able to gather my BPM for that. Now, if you look over here, I actually have a 125 BPM where I can now, sorry. Back to the beginning, here we go. So there's my 4-bar loop. Let's now start adding in that frenzy one I was talking about here. Frenzy, what was it? Frenzy synth. I believe it was chords 2. We can now drop some of these bad boys in here. Now what happens is we have a loop that's going and going and going. Probably at the wrong time. Let's stop this. I'm going to start them all at the same time. So this frenzy loop is much faster. It's actually going to conform to the 125 because that's what Apple loops do. Even though it says 128 here, it's going to conform to a 125 once I drop it in here. Obviously, you see it in the same spot. It is a 4-beat, which is lines up for what I'm talking about here. I know you just heard them all out of sync, but let's see what happens if I'm able to bring that in and take that same thing and start introducing electronic elements into a very acoustic song. Let's see what happens here. Now they are a little bit off, so something's not right with the timing of these, and I'm pretty sure it's probably my loops that are the problem. My originally created loops are probably the issue here. So what we'll have to do in order to get those right is we'll have to go in and make the cuts right? I mean, what we're doing is the same thing as what we were doing in the edit window in the first place. We want to make sure that we're cutting it right at first moment. So we'll cut there so we don't leave all this blank MIDI space out of here. All right, that's nonsense. Don't need that. And then let's go out to our 4-bar loop here because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be all the way to this. So let's make sure our last note of our loops actually go all the way out so they're not cutting it off ahead of time. Let's see what this one goes out to 5. Okay. So now that these 2 loops, quote unquote, are set, let's replace them over here. Stop it. Delete that. Delete that. Now we'll bring in, as I mentioned, we can now just drag these loops over here. Once I build them over here in the edit window, I can drag them into the live loops. Now you can see they almost look a little more whole. Let's see if I got this right now. Play. All right, it's close. I still think I have like a 1 beat issue or a half a beat issue, which I might be able to control over here because it doesn't start directly on the 1. As you can see, it's a little before the 1, which could be the issue. I'm not sure yet. And let's pull that back to 1 so we know we have a start point of 1. Right? So it's every beat or so. Let's go into my cello over on this one. It's probably not a good idea. Oops. I think I deleted. There it is. Oh, I had them both, right? So that's why. So let's take both of these guys and just extend them up to the front end. Okay, so now they should both be, and I was like maybe a third of a bar off, and that's why that happened. And again, I'm doing this just kind of to match up what's going on in the project. We'll have these drag out. So they're full note, full bar notes, right? Yep. Good. And then this one will drag out to 3. And I'll have to go back in and just, realign this to the project, because as much as I'm doing this just for live loops, it doesn't mean it's going to work now for the project, because the project, you could see, is going to be a little off because I don't have the timing of the whole project right at 0. I didn't align everything. So let's take a look now at how my changes have taken place, and we're only going to be listening to it in live loops. So let's do this. Stop that. Stop. Let's get them to sync up together, and here we go. Now in live loops, they are perfectly in sync. I got this down pat. I have 4 notes, 4 beats for the entire section. Both cellos and piano are in sync. And now my 1 bar sample, which is this frenzy chord, is in here. And I'm able now to get 4 of these to happen, basically swelling from the start point of each of these notes. And again, this is how I start building and building and building. Now, the next thing I would probably bring in is maybe something with more of a beat, right? And I know we went into synths and stuff like that. So let's reset this. That's not what I want. Oh, because I have it in Frenzy Synth. Let's get out of that. Let's do a little beat, and then let's okay, a lot slower, right? So obviously, when we drag this in, this is going to now try to conform. So this might have to go through 1 cycle as the other ones go through 2 or 3 cycles. So let's see how that all syncs up. I'm going to stop it for a second. There we go. Now they're all in sync. So what you can see is that even though it was a 70 BPM offbeat tempo, because it was 16 beats, we were able to crunch that into 4, basically doubling our speed and giving us about 140. But then I reconformed it again through the project, keeping 125. So it actually gave the sense of a faster chill out beat. So that's just a chill out beat. But if I bring it into here and speed it up, now we have something much faster. Now, just like in the edit window, if you copy a loop over, you hold down Option, stop it. You can actually copy this over. So if I wanted to keep the cellos spinning with their loop, but I wanted to build a brand new composition here of a different beat or a different synth or more bass or less strings or whatever it is, just doing the same thing we used to do over here in the edit window, the same function tools and things like that, it's all going to make sense. Now, there's some new things at the top here. Let's go over those. First, let me get rid of the edit window completely. This new button here now controls whether we're listening to live loops in the mix or we're listening to the loops I created over here right? So here's that bar. You can turn it on and off. Or I'm sorry, it's the extension. I'm looking at the wrong one. This is just making the grid lines bigger, but still the same thing. You're not really increasing speed or anything. This is grid zoom is what they call it. This is the ability to transfer live loops over to regular MIDI notes. So I'm not transferring really. I'm just listening it now from the edit window as opposed to listening to it from the live loop section. So that's a brand new little section of Logic that you're going to want to know about. Okay, so there we go. So you can kind of go back and forth. Am I going there? Am I going there? Am I going there? Am I going there? Which one am I listening to? And that really is one of the major parts of this. The other one, and let me increase that and get rid of this, is this quantize issue. So right now, you're looking at the quantization of the loops. This is interesting because it can determine how these loops interact with each other. If we're completely turning off things, then whatever you create and the timing you created and all that good stuff, it will be what it will be. My thought process is if you're going to increase it, then you're going to get more beats per bar, more bars per each sample. Right now, when you start live loops, it looks like it's only a 1 bar, right? It's giving you that. Doesn't matter what's in that bar, it's giving you the 1 bar quantization start. Let's turn to 8 bars and see if anything really changes. It's a cool little rolling thing here. So now they're waiting and I can put them in to the beat. So really nothing much there. Go back to 1 bar loops. Let's see if anything changed. Look at that. So now these are playing immediately off the bat. So basically what we're doing is we're actually changing when the play time of these will be in. And we didn't even get to the 8 bar point. It would take a while before it finally got to 8 bars to do the start of these loops that I created. Now, right off the bat, I have them started at 1, which is probably pretty much where I would want them. You can requantize them as well, or the smart pickup. And that's another thing that if, in fact, you weren't quite sure how things interact with each other within your given composition, my recommendation is see if you can make things happen a little differently with the different quantization starts. I'm going to stop all these for a minute. We're actually going to have them play out by all together. So here's a 2 bar quantize. You can see there's a thing here that's dictating when and where these things will start. The other one is the enable performance recording. So we actually can do recording while here. We're going to get into some string stuff tomorrow. But we can actually, while playing back, start doing performance elements. You can see now that loop stopped. And now I'm just typing in a couple little new things into this, and it'll end up and recording that new data into there. Or if you want to just record a whole new one, this was the other way to do it. And we did this before. You hit record. Right, so now we got a brand new loop here. And if we bring that into the system, and obviously these are all out of sync again, so I'll stop them up. You know, this is where it does get a little different because of what you're doing. And here comes the 2 bar delayed start. So maybe I'll quantization these bad boys up to a, let's say 16th note. So at least they're on the downbeats. That's what they look like. This one's a little delayed. So let's see where we're at with that. We'll push this one as a delayed start with the quantization 2 bar. There we go. Right, to get the idea that now I have a variation of the cellos. One is just a held bow note. The other one is kind of a staccato or piccato kind of movement. Now we can do this differently with a different, with the new sampler. We'll say, I won't say the different sampler. It's definitely a newer sampler. And so the new sampler looks a little like this. And I want to do a lot of that tomorrow. While we're just soaking that all in, does anybody have any questions about live loops versus your edit window? I went through a lot of the differences between how they operate, both recording and editing and changing, and how one still works on the basis that we're very familiar with timing and click and editing over here in the edit window, but this one works a little differently. It works more like a sequencer than anything else. But you got to be careful on how you're programming and sequencing. Nothing. All right. Well, guys, thanks a lot for hanging out for a little bit. We'll continue with some brand new stuff in Logic Pro X 10.5 tomorrow. Continue to talk about live looping and some sampling and new features, new delay designer and space designer. So many new features. Like I said, this was a huge upgrade for Logic, and I want you guys to be aware of all the pieces, whether it be in the future or for our class next year. Enjoy the rest of the beautiful day, guys. I'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Make sure you get all your work done. Holla, holla, holla.